Today I'm at the Henry Ford Museum in their With Liberty and Justice for All exhibit. Just around the corner here, you're going to see the centerpiece of the exhibit. This is the actual bus where Rosa Parks made history in 1955, Montgomery, Alabama, by refusing to give up her seat. That simple act that sparked the civil rights movement. So this is the bus. This was Rosa Parks' view, the steps that she climbed up that day in 1955. And she walked back to this seat right here and sat down. And this would have been her view as she sat in her seat if she'd looked around the bus. So apparently the way that it worked, there weren't assigned seats necessarily for white passengers and black passengers, but white passengers were expected to sit in front of the black passengers. So if there's a lot of white people boarding the bus and there's no seats in front of the black passengers need to move back to the back. They need to move back further. So these front rows here, these were white people. Back here you had Rosa Parks and the other black passengers. And the bus driver sees this. These white people need to sit down, so he says, move back. You and you, all of you, move back.
I boarded the bus downtown Montgomery on Court Square. On the third stop, the white passengers had filled the front of the bus. The seat I occupied was the first of the seats where the Negro passengers take as they on this route. The driver noticed that the front of the bus was filled with white passengers and there would be 2 or 3 men standing. He looked back and asked that the seat where I had taken, along with 3 other persons, one in the seat with me and 2 across the aisle, seated. He demanded the seat that we were occupying. The other passengers very reluctantly gave up their seats, but I refused to do so. The driver said that if I refused to leave the seat, he would have to call the police, and I told him just call the police, which he did, and when they came, they placed me under arrest. The time had just come when I had been pushed as far as I could stand to be pushed, I suppose. I had decided that I would have to know once and for all what rights I had as a human being and a citizen, even in Montgomery, Alabama.
Now the bus driver essentially, he stopped the bus and he did not continue down the route because he was so adamant that she was not going to sit there. So he was calling the police. The police had to come escort her off the bus. And therefore, as you can imagine, all the passengers, they don't want to wait around for this. So the rest of the passengers were leaving the bus because this was a hassle for them to have to deal with, this bus driver and the whole situation. It's simply remarkable that we have this piece of history, largely because it was lost. It wasn't, maybe considered as significant of an event. For the bus company, they probably would prefer to have forgotten about the whole thing. They eventually sold this thing off, and somebody was using it just for storage. It sat out in a field, and somebody was just storing junk inside of it. Now, there isn't any information here at the museum that talks about how the museum acquired this bus, but I'll do the best I can based on the research that I've done. Sometime in the 90s, the Henry Ford began looking for this bus, the Rosa Parks bus. And they ended up finding a bus through different leads in a field in Alabama. And to figure out that this was the bus, they came across a scrapbook that a maintenance guy at the bus garage had kept. And in his scrapbook, he had notes and photographs, including the bus number, which was 2857, as well as the driver's name written down by these pictures. And that was the link where they realized this bus is the bus that they've been looking for. So now that the owners know what they have, it ended up going to auction. And you had all kinds of museums looking for this thing. The Smithsonian wanted it. There were museums all over the place that wanted this bus. Word on the street is that the reason that the Henry Ford got this versus the Smithsonian, who probably had way more funding, is it was the bureaucracy of the Smithsonian. And they needed to get approval through various channels to spend the amount of money that they were talking about, which ended up being $492,000. And because it took them so long, the Ford ended up getting the bus. And then they put like another $300,000 into it to renovate it to what we have today. Because it had been sitting out in the field, the seats had been stripped out of it. So that's the supposed story of how this bus came to be here at the Henry Ford, one of the most popular exhibits in the museum today, if not the most popular. So as interesting as that story is about the bus, I don't want it to overshadow, I guess, what I'm trying to say here with this exhibit. The exhibit communicates a beautiful story. What Rosa Parks did that day, it wasn't just about not giving up her seat, it was standing up to that entire system of injustice that was the segregated South at the time. And that arrest led to the Montgomery Bus Boycott, which lasted over a year. That was a powerful show of what a peaceful protest could do. It was a major moment in civil rights. It was a major launching pad for Martin Luther King Jr. into the national limelight. And it was an act of defiance that really became a symbol for this fight of equality and justice in the United States that the African American community had long lacked.
Are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people. I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times.
Because of civil rights and voting discrimination.
I'd say that I visit a lot of museums and attractions, but that this particular artifact is just really astounding. If you're ever in the Detroit area, stop by here at the Henry Ford. I encourage you to see it in person. Such a powerful piece of history. And if you're not from this area and you're not able to come, I'm glad I could share it with you through these means. And I appreciate you watching, and I will see you down the road.